Good morning, everybody. I'm happy to see you here in our institute for this important conference, which the main focus is the policy and the involvement of Russia in the Middle East. I know that it's a big challenge today to come to Tel Aviv in the morning because of the traffic change, and so those which came, I assume that were determined enough in order to arrive to Tel Aviv, even we are in the northern part of Tel Aviv. And the people which came from abroad, I hope that you will have enough time to spend in Tel Aviv, because this is the best city all over the world. And I hope that you will enjoy it. The weather is excellent and everything is excellent here in Tel Aviv. This idea came by our group, which the idea of the conference came from our group, which are dealing with Russia all over the world, not only in the Middle East, but of course focus with the Middle East. And the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung, which we have good relations with them, and we do a lot of cooperation with Konrad-Adenauer. And this is important that we are ready to bring also people from abroad in order to share knowledge and ideas and look upon the future. You know, we are in almost 2020 and have to look upon the next decade and what will be the main challenges. I remember that when 4 years, more than 4 years, 4 years and 3 months ago, the first fighters, Russian fighters, landed in a Syrian airbase. Some very smart person, which is not here today, came to me and said to me, this is new strategic reality. And Russia came to the Middle East not in order to accomplish the mission and to live, but in order to stay for long term here in the Middle East. In the beginning, we thought that the main objective was to support Assad, especially to be sure that Assad survive in his position, the Assad regime and Assad himself will stay in the position of the president of Syria. So the idea was that there is military support, especially air support, to the fighting against the rebels. Basically, even the title was Fighting Against Terrorism and all the jihadist organizations, and ISIS later on. But the main idea was to support Assad to survive and to stay in his position as the president of Syria. So the idea was, in the beginning, we thought that the Russian forces will accomplish the mission and would leave Syria, which didn't declare victory. Of course, it's very important to declare victory and leave Syria. But as we see the situation, Syria is quite kind of swamp, and when you come to the Syrian swamp, unfortunately, you are diving in the swamp, and it's very difficult to go out. And it's very, very difficult to arrange better situation today. And I can say that Russia has become the main mature, responsible actor which try to manage the situation in Syria, to achieve some stability, reforms in the political systems and other things. But it's still quite a big challenge how to achieve those goals. Our government, from the beginning, understood that we have to create some kind of coordination between our forces and the Russian forces in Syria, and we established what we call the deconfliction mechanism, which worked very well. There was only one event that somebody blamed us about the shooting down or intercepting of the Russian reconnaissance aircraft in the Syrian coast in the north, which in that area were some activity before of our fighters. So there were some problems between us and the coordination center and the relations between Israel and Russia. But basically, along 4 years, more than 4 years, there is very good coordination. And the coordination, it's not only in the tactical level, it's also in the strategic level, which we try to be, let's say, to use the Russian overriding responsibility in Syria in order to assist or to support Israel with our main challenge, and I assume that we will go into discuss it during the conference, the situation in which Iran try now, taking the advantage of the civil war in Syria in order to consolidate in Syria for long term. And from the Israeli point of view, of the Israeli language, we are saying that Iran building up its military machine or military capabilities, which they can use Syria as platform, as in Lebanon and in Western Iraq, in order to attack Israel by missiles, by drones, by UAVs, by other means. And this is a big challenge to Israel. And Israel decided that we will not intervene in the civil war in Syria, but also if there is imminent threat, we have to deal with the imminent threat. Imminent threat can be terror activity, imminent threat can be delivery of advanced weapon systems to Hezbollah and the other proxies of Iran, and imminent threat is that Iran build up military capabilities, as I said, missiles, UAVs and other things, in order to attack Israel. This is the only cases that Israel understood that we have to operate in order to prevent or minimize or, trying to create any political process. And this is now the big challenge to Israel in the Israeli policy. If Russia is able and willing, in the end of the story, to push the Iranian out of Syria. And this is a big question that I assume that we are going to discuss during that conference, because our military capabilities are not enough in order to solve the problem. In order to solve the problem, you need the political process. You need somebody which will take the responsibility, somebody which will try to manage a situation, to achieve stability, and to push away those which try all the time to create destabilizing factors and other negative means. And this is now the big challenge, the big questions for Israel, if we have to rely on Russia in that case, or we have to do other things in order to make sure that nobody use Syria, Lebanon, other areas as platform in order to attack Israel. So I assume that those subjects will be part of the conference. There is another issue which Ambassador Tzvi Magen always come to us and say, in order to understand better the Russian policy in the Middle East, we have to look upon the global policy and the global trends and what is behind the superpowers. So we will look upon, of course, the ideas and the relations and the activity, engagement from the superpower, and how the Middle East is part of the global game. It's not only, we are living here. For us, this is the main area and the main important issues, but we have to look in broad field of view in order to understand better other activities, trends, and interests which are playing in the global way. So thank you again for coming. Thank you again, Vera, Daniela, Tzvi. Thank you, Alexander, for your contribution and participation. And thank you for the visitors which came from abroad to participate in this conference. And I assume that it will be very fruitful discussions, and we will come with new ideas after this day of sitting together and discussing the issue. Thank you.
And next in the part of greeting is Dr. Alexander Brakel, head of Jerusalem office of Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Vera, for the nice introduction, and thank you, Udi and the INSS, for making this possible, for helping us, the Adenauer Foundation, to enable what you just claimed we should do, bringing a global perspective. You were talking about the Middle East. If Germans are talking about Russia, they are of course talking about the European perspective. So I think it's a very important step that we are taking today, at least for a German who's usually thinking about Russia as a European power. Russian and German history has been intertwined at least since the 18th century, when Russia emerged as a great power on the European scene, and there have been ups and downs in our mutual history. Unfortunately, the ups very often resulted in not so good times for other European neighbors. Especially the Poles are very aware of that. Therefore, after the end of the Cold War, it was Germany's ambition to have a good relationship with Russia that would not go or come at the expense of other European neighbors. And unfortunately, we failed on this vector. Probably the first major blow to that was dealt in 1999, when a group of countries from the former socialist bloc in the East joined NATO. From the German perspective, that were seen as the sovereign rights of these countries, and it was seen as an important step to strengthen the sovereignty of these countries. But from a Russian perspective, this was perceived as a threat, and it was perceived as a betrayal of what they saw as an agreement in the early 1990s. One might argue that the very same year, 1999, saw a second blow with the NATO engagement in Kosovo, something that Russia ardently opposed back then. And unfortunately, our mutual relationship has been going down since then. Again, not constantly, with some ups and downs, but I think at least since 2014, with the Russian annexation of Crimea, Russia and German relationship have reached a new level of realpolitik. Until that, you would have had strong opponents in Germany for a new détente, for a closer relationship with Russia, with what I would call the allusion to changing Russia's political system, making Russia more benign to a Western political system by engaging with the Russian government. The annexation of Crimea basically brought an end to this illusion. So right now you will still find people in German politics, and I'm speaking about the mainstream of German politics, who think that it might be not a good idea to keep to the sanctions that are currently imposed on Russia, that a politics of a new engagement might be needed, but these politicians no longer harbor the illusion that this might lead to a German-Russian friendship. It's simply a matter of means, so everything is back in the camp of realpolitik, with the sole exception of the right-wing populist. As we all know, they're supported by the Russian government, not only in Germany, but in France and other countries as well. But again, as important as Russia is for Germany, and how much of significance it gained, especially in the perception of a strategic threat since 2014, the German view on Russia is first and foremost a European one, directed to the European scene, and I think we can all agree that this is only part of the picture, and is of high importance to turn our view to this particular region as well. And I'm not telling you a secret when I say that at least 2015, with the migrant crisis, Germany finally understood that the Middle East, which in Germany we call the Near East, is indeed really near, and it can highly impact our regional stability. And therefore, I'm very glad that today we have the opportunity to add the Middle Eastern perspective on Russia's activity to our picture. At least that's what I'm hoping to take away from this conference. I think we managed to gather a very interesting international crowd for this conference. Thanks again to INSS for that, and thanks to my colleague Lisa Katz, who managed the conference from our side. Now, without any further ado, I'd like to give the panel to the real experts. Really looking forward to a fruitful conference. Thank you very much for your interest.